Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison LaGrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison LaGrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Hamas informs mediators Egypt, Qatar and Turkey that it is ready to reach a truce in Gaza and a serious deal to exchange prisoners, hailing the Lebanon ceasefire. Ukraine's defense minister holds key bilateral meetings in Seoul as he discusses potential South Korean military support to Kiev, while North Korean troops aid Russia. China launches a corruption investigation against its defense minister, Dong Jun, as President Xi Jinping continues a sweeping crackdown on graft in the country's military. Bangladesh plunges into chaos again, security heightened in the Chittagong, and 6 arrested for murder of a lawyer who was killed during clashes following the arrest of a Hindu priest. At least 1,000 protesters were arrested by Pakistan police as supporters of former Prime Minister Imran Khan marched to the capital Islamabad demanding his release. Hello and welcome. Our top focus is on Mauritius, the small island nation in the Indian Ocean, strategically located at the crossroads between Asia, Europe and Africa. Just last month, the country reached a historic agreement with a former colonial power, Britain. The agreement was to finally hand back the Chagos Islands to Mauritius after a dispute running for more than 50 years. But this deal is now under threat. The one person who can jinx the deal is none other than the US President-elect Donald Trump. As per reports, Trump is finding ways to veto the deal. He is seeking assurances that the deal should not be completed before he takes oath in January next year. Donald Trump's stance is creating panic in London and Port Louis. The Keir Starmer-led UK government is trying to rush the agreement. London fears Donald Trump would rip apart the deal. Its envoy was in Mauritius this week for talks. So why is the Chagos deal between the UK government and Mauritius over some remote islands a matter of high concern for Washington? For this, we need to understand the Chagos agreements. Now, the Chagos Islands are a remote group of more than 60 smaller islands located in the Indian Ocean, around 2,000 kilometers away from Mauritius. In October this year, after years of talks, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and his then Mauritian counterpart Pravin Jugnauth signed an agreement to grant Mauritius control of the islands, taking over sovereignty from its former colonial ruler. However, the deal has a catch. Under the deal, the UK will retain control of the Diego Garcia, part of the Chagos, which is home to a joint UK-US military base. Now, the UK would lease the Diego Garcia for at least 99 years. The deal had the blessings of the current US President Joe Biden. However, the next White House occupant is not happy with it. As per reports, Trump is alarmed over the security implications on its crucial joint base in Diego Garcia. He believes that the deal will allow China the access to the islands to build its own rival base, and this will further complicate the overall geopolitical situation in the Indian Ocean and the Indo-Pacific region. So, as the word has spread on how the newly elected US president is viewing the deal, the UK government has launched efforts to change his stance. Now, as per reports, Keir Starmer's national security advisor is going to travel to Washington to convince Trump and his team to continue the deal. While the Chagos deal is sparking a wider debate, it is also facing criticism at home. The leader who signed the historic deal with the UK is out. Mauritius elected a new prime minister just a fortnight ago, and the new prime minister is reportedly not on the same page with his predecessor. Prime Minister Navin Chandra Ramgoolam has indicated reservations on the lease agreement under the deal during talks with the British envoy this week. Even during his election campaign, he and his allies accused then Prime Minister Jugnauth of high treason. Now, describing the agreement as a sellout motivated by desperation ahead of the vote. Some of his ministers have been more specific, claiming that Jugnauth has not agreed to lease Diego Garcia for 99 but 200 years. While the UK's Labour government is keen to carry on with the deal, it has various loose ends that need to be fixed. How will the heated rift over the Chagos Islands end? And will Donald Trump tear apart the Chagos deal? Now, to discuss this further, we have with us Musa Mdunge, an international affairs expert who is joining us live from Dundee in the UK. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, given Donald Trump's history of opposing international agreements, he perceives as detrimental to US interests. How might his administration, along with Marco Rubio, his chosen Secretary of State, challenge or perhaps block the Chagos Islands deal, especially considering Rubio's concerns about US security?
No, well, thank you for that question. You know, the rise of Donald Trump 2.0 has consequential impact for this particular deal, as has been struck by the United Kingdom and Mauritius in concern of the Chagos archipelago, and particularly the Diego Garcia, which is the most important of those islands, as it provides one of two of America's very key and strategic military bases, allowing it to ensure that it is able to support logistical support for naval support, as well as for private companies that are using that shipping lane. But secondly, given the rise of China in terms of its Belt and Road Initiative, these particular islands are quite critical to how the United States sees its ability in blocking China's rise, not only in South Asia, the Indo-Pacific, but as well as Africa and the Persian Gulf for that matter. And so the views as shown by Marco Rubio are in line with Republican sentiments. And given that the Republicans are in control of the Senate, one understands the need for Keir Starmer to move quickly on this deal, because once the new president is inaugurated next year and there's a changing of the guard, American foreign policy will shift in alignment with Donald Trump.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Musa, with Trump's focus on prioritizing American security interests, how might his administration approach balancing its military presence in Diego Garcia with the sovereignty claims of Mauritius and the broader international legal implications of the Chagos Islands deal?
You know, I don't think that Donald Trump really cares much about the multilateral implications of his foreign policy. And, you know, we only have to look to his first term. This is a president, in terms of the Trump doctrine, who prioritizes bilateral agreements who prioritizes the kind of relations which will place American interests first. One of the mistakes that a lot of commentators have made is assuming that Donald Trump's America First policy is an isolationist policy. It is not, in fact. In fact, it is changing the reasons by which America engages the world. And in terms of this particular deal, as we see that America pushing for the continual leasing of, the Diego Garcia Island, it speaks to that sort of machination where for Donald Trump, the Republicans and the USA at large, the importance of this island is not only about the economic implications. We know what is happening with the proliferation of piracy in that particular region that has huge economic and security implications.
Yes.
But secondly, it is again about mitigating the rise of China and Xi Jinping's posture in the region where he really is trying to make China strong again. So for Donald Trump, the multilateral implications as it concerns institutions is neither here nor there. He's going to look for those quid pro quos, and a deal with Mauritius and a deal with the United States that maintains the status quo is likely to be the avenue by which he goes. And if Marco Rubio is confirmed as the Secretary of State, he is likely to support that kind of vision.
Absolutely. And Diego Garcia, as you've said, hosts a strategically significant joint UK-US military base. If Trump expresses strong opposition to the lease or the deal, what implications could this have for the US-UK relations? And then furthermore, regional security in the Indian Ocean?
Well, starting with that UK-US relation, I mean, there's a nervousness in Downing Street right now about Trump coming in. There were thoughts that, had perhaps a Rishi Sunak won in July, that would then mean you'd have a Conservative Party, Republican Party, which have similarities in ideology. But in this particular case, Keir Starmer's got to deal with the cards that he's been dealt. And while I don't think that there'll be a long-term damage to these relations, because the UK right now prioritizes the American relationship far more important post-Brexit, given the economic agitations in the United Kingdom. So I think those economic interests will trump, excuse the pun, whatever sort of challenges may arise given this deal, whether it falls through or whether it is maintained. But I think for economic and security interests, it is likely that this deal will go through. In terms of region, I think for countries like India, they will welcome this particular deal. If you consider the fact that China's Belt and Road Initiative strikes Pakistan, it strikes the Maldives, it strikes Sri Lanka. And so ensuring that Mauritius remains within the ambit of Western influence, and by extension, that of the Indian influence, will be very key and very important as India seeks to counterbalance China's rise in the region. Thirdly lastly here, Alison, is then the issue of the African continent, where we know through the Pelindaba Treaty that the African continent has committed itself to a nuclear weapon-free continent. What are the implications of the maintenance of this deal as pertains to nuclear proliferation on the continent? Because currently, there's no clear evidence whether America has some sort of stockpile of nuclear weapons in this particular military base, as it does in others. And so it will be interesting, Alison, to hear the African Union's voice on this issue, which for me, it's quite interesting to see that it has been quite silent on this matter.
Absolutely. Musa, as always, great to have you on the show. Thank you for your valued insights and analysis.
Thank you so much for having me.
Moving on to South Africa now, where fresh troubles are looming over President Cyril Ramaphosa. The infamous Farmgate scandal is back to haunt him and could possibly remove him from office. Now, two opposition parties in South Africa has asked the country's top court to revive the impeachment proceedings against President Ramaphosa. This request by the leftist economic freedom fighters and the African Transformation Movement is over the Farmgate scandal. Ramaphosa, who assumed the top job in South Africa in 2018, with a pledge to clamp down on corruption, is accused of hiding more than $500,000 in unaccounted cash at his farm. In 2020, somewhere from $500,000 to $4 million were stolen from Ramaphosa's Palapala farm. And this cash was stashed down the back of a sofa in his farmhouse. It raised questions about where the cash came from. Ramaphosa was accused of money laundering and breaching foreign currency laws, and also of covering up the theft. However, he denied all the allegations, claiming that the money came from the legitimate sale of animals at his ranch. After the scandal emerged, Ramaphosa faced large legal scrutiny, and he also faced impeachment proceedings at the parliament in 2022. However, back then, his party, the African National Congress, held majority in parliament. The ANC was successful in preventing the impeachment motion from getting the 2/3 vote, and these were needed to proceed. However, 2 years on, the opposition remains adamant that their fight to impeach Ramaphosa, and they say that Parliament did not fulfill its constitutional duty to hold the president to account. Now, the opposition is demanding a full parliamentary investigation, though Ramaphosa has already been cleared of wrongdoing by the financial authorities. He might not get his way in Parliament this time. Ramaphosa's ANC is no longer in possession of the majority in Parliament. In the presidential polls held in May of this year, the party lost majority for the first time in 30 years. It had to join hands with rival parties to form a government of national unity. However, the two parties that have requested the revival of the motion, the EFF and the ATM, are small parties to impeach Ramaphosa. They would need support from others who joined the ANC-led coalition government, which is being seen as unlikely. The Constitutional Court typically takes weeks and sometimes months to deliver a ruling. Despite the challenges, the return of impeachment hearings could be risky for Ramaphosa, who is heading Africa's most advanced economy. And now shifting our focus to election season in Africa, where the southern African nation of Namibia is voting to elect a new head of state and probably its first female president. Namibia, a nation of 3 million people and located on the coast of the Atlantic Ocean, is voting today to elect a new president as well as members to its National Assembly. Some 1.5 million eligible voters will choose their next president out of 15 candidates. And it is very likely that the country might just elect its first female president. The country is currently governed by an interim president, Nangolo Mbumba, who took over in February after the former president Hage Geingob had died.
The people decide. Today they decide. And they will tell us how they feel in their hearts, how they feel in their mind, and how they want their future to be. Let us give the Namibian people today the sovereignty only belongs to the citizens.
But Mbumba is not contesting this year's elections, paving the way for the likely election of the vice president, Netambo Nandi-Ndaitwah, as the president. Despite certain hurdles for her party, the Southwest African People's Organization, or the SWAPO, that has led the country since its independence from apartheid South Africa in 1990. But who is Netambo Nandi-Ndaitwah, and how likely is she to win this election? Now, Nandi-Ndaitwah is currently the vice president of Namibia since February of this year. She returned from the United Kingdom to join Parliament in 1990 and went on to serve as the minister with several portfolios over the years. Former President Hage Geingob had selected her as his successor before his passing in February. She was among a host of SWAPO members actively involved in the country's fight for independence in exile. Now, if elected, Nandi-Ndaitwah will be joining Tanzania's Samia Suluhu Hassan to be the second female head of state of a country in Africa. After casting her vote on Wednesday, Nandi Nditwa has urged voters to come out in large numbers during the polls.
Voting, you are making your voice to be heard, that will have an impact for the next 5 years in your life and in the life of every Namibian and any person who's visiting this country. So please come out in your numbers and cast your votes.
But the race to power is tight for Nandi Nditwa. Her party has seen a large drop in its support in the last general elections in 2019. It is heading to elections amid an unemployment rate of 19%, troubled government finances, questions about corruption and high levels of inequality. Also standing in her path to victory is her main challenger, Panduleni Itula, of the Independent Patriots for Change, or the IPC party. Itula was once a SWAPO youth leader before his exile to the UK in the 1970s. In the 2019 elections, Itula shook up the political landscape when he ran as an independent candidate against the late President Geingob. Now, he clinched a 29% of the votes in the elections. Itula criticizes the SWAPO government for what he describes as endemic corruption and general inefficiency in Namibia. He remains popular, especially among Namibia's youth. Another prominent opposition candidate is Mcheri Venani. Now, he is the leader of the Popular Democratic Movement, the largest opposition party in parliament. He had managed to clinch only 5% of the votes in 2019 when he ran for president, and has promised to prioritize Namibia's agricultural sector to ensure food security, job creation, and to widen the country's economic base. Now, some of the key issues that citizens are keeping in mind while voting include the rising poverty levels, growing inequality, unemployment among the youth, and concerns around corruption, as well as issues surrounding the ownership of houses and land in the country. Now, Nandi Nditwa has promised to create more jobs and to tackle the unemployment rate for young people and graduates in the country. Speaking at a rally before elections, she emphasized why voting for SWAPO was necessary.
We should choose for our oil and gas to be a blessing. In making sure we take it, we put it under the care of the SWAPO party. A party with a history, a party that cares for our people. And your candidate, truly, I am from that generation of liberation.
Her opponents, such as Itula, have also promised economic prosperity for the youth and a reduction of corporate taxes, so more foreign companies can move to the country. But Namibia's elections are coming at a crucial time in the region. Parties that led independence movements have either been losing majority or have been thrown out of power. South Africa's African National Congress, that governed for 30 years without a coalition, lost its majority in the May elections. The Botswana Democratic Party, which ruled the nation since 1966, also lost in the October 30th elections. So it is a tight race for SWAPO in Namibia. Still, reports suggest that while unemployment, inequality and corruption allegations have led to disenchantment with the ruling party, especially among the youth, the long-standing loyalty to SWAPO among the older and rural voters could help it to pull through in the election. While the results for the elections are still awaited, the big question in everyone's mind remains, will Namibia be electing its first female president? Or will it hand power to her opponents, who are promising a change in the country? And turning our attention to North Africa now, where Algeria has detained a French-Algerian novelist on national security charges. Now, reports suggest that Algerian authorities have remanded in custody prominent French-Algerian novelist Boualem Sansal on the charges of national security after he was arrested on the 16th of November following his return from Paris. Sansal's lawyer reportedly said that he was placed in detention on the basis of an article of the Algerian Penal Code, which punishes all attacks on state security. He further said that Sansal was interrogated by anti-terrorist prosecutors and was being deprived of his freedom on the grounds of his controversial writing. Now, the charges leveled against Bourlam Sansal come in the backdrop of rising diplomatic tensions between Algeria and its former colonizer France. French President Emmanuel Macron has renewed the country's support for Moroccan sovereignty over the disputed territory of Western Sahara. To contextualize, the dispute in Western Sahara dates back to 1975, when colonial power Spain pulled out of the territory. Morocco and Mauritania then divided the region among themselves. However, the Algeria-backed Polisario Front launched a military struggle against the occupation. Mauritania withdrew and left the area to Morocco, which has maintained its claim over the region. It now controls over 80% of the Western Sahara. Algeria does not claim the area, but has lent military, financial and other kinds of support to the Polisario movement. Now, Paris's support to Morocco on the issue pushed Algeria to recall its ambassador to France earlier this year, further worsening the relations between the two countries. In such a scenario, remanding and detaining a prominent novelist with national security charges has alarmed not only France, but also the literary world. Now, the 75-year-old Bourlam Sansal is a French-Algerian author, turned to writing novels in the year 1999. He has written a variety of subjects, including the horrific 1990 civil war between Algerian authorities and Islamists. Although his books are not banned in Algeria, but he has, over the years, become a controversial figure in the North African country after he made a visit to Israel in 2014. Now, Sansal has also won the Grand Prix du Roman of the French Academy in 2015 for his book 2084, The End of the World, which was a novel that was inspired by George Orwell's 1984, and it was set in an Islamist totalitarian world in the aftermath of a nuclear holocaust. Sansal has not only spoken about his hatred toward Islam in Algeria, but has also warned of rising Islamization in France, which has made him popular with politicians on the right and far right. He was granted French nationality earlier this year. Now, ever since his arrest on the 16th of November in Algiers, several famous authors, including Salman Rushdie, Annie Ernaux, and Wal Soyinka, have called for the immediate release of Sansal. A call for his release was also made by the French publication Le Point, which is written by the French-Algerian novelist Kamal Daoud, who was himself under attack in Algeria for his novel Horace, which won France's top literary prize, the Goncourt. Now, last week, reports suggested that French President Emmanuel Macron had also raised concerns over the sudden disappearance of Sansal and his arrest. Far-right political leader Marine Le Pen has said that it was unacceptable for a freedom fighter and courageous opponent of Islamism to be arrested, according to media reports. While there are very few details available about where Sansal has been kept after his detention and what further actions would the Algerian authorities take against him, it certainly has raised questions about the freedom of speech and expression in Algeria. And with that, it's a wrap on the show. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
It's over! He's done it again! Unbelievable! Oh, straight into the roof of the net. Nice one. Straight down the middle. So a good performance from both.
Hello and welcome.